My name is Silvester Henderson. I am the CEO for Professor for Life Incorporated, and I'm also a full-time music professor for Los Alamos College. I am so honored this evening. We are going to have an opportunity to interview a gentleman by the name of Dr.J. Edward Stevenson, who is no longer working as a faculty professional. He has now sort of moved to the positive side. I won't say the dark side. As a full-time dean of business and workforce development for San Jose City College. But he also has in the past, he understands all of the complications and tenements that go along with being a professor as well. So I'm honored to have a person who has so much skill to come on this evening and share his journey. I would say good afternoon, Dr. Stevenson.
Good afternoon, Professor Henderson. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for the invitation, and for that introduction. It's funny because you're right. As I was reflecting, I said the last time we had spent some time together was certainly before COVID, and I feel it was at some statewide academic senate event. And so it's so nice to be connected and to be a part of this work and this conversation that you're creating.
Very much so. Can you please introduce or describe your work and obligations as a full-time dean of business and workforce development for San Jose City College? What areas do you oversee?
Yeah, I get to have fun here in the Silicon Valley area. The South Bay, depending on what part of the state you're from. We call it a couple of different things. And, in the work that I do, I really couch it like this. I'm responsible for leading the team that puts San Jose to work. And so some of the features of business and workforce development is that we are focused on career education. And I say it this way as well, quite honestly, even our transfer students, once they transfer and finish their bachelor's degree, they too want a job, right? And so the work that I do gets to prepare students to either go directly into the workforce through our career education programs or through our some of the highest enrolling transfer programs that we have here at the college. That's business administration, our computer science program, and our other computer technology programs. And so all told, I support 18 disciplines that include our allied health programs, building and construction trades, and the manufacturing programs, laser technology, machining, as well as our personal services program. So that's cosmetology, aesthetics, and I get to have fun with those career-focused programs. And then, of course, our transfer programs in accounting, business, and computer information systems.
Wow, that is quite an obligation. I recall the year that I worked as acting dean over science, technology, engineering, art, and math, STEAM, for College of Alameda. I recall saying, wow, working as an administrator was such an awesome task, but there were a lot of responsibilities. Can you describe your current role? How do you feel as a higher educational administrator? How do
my goodness.
Tell me what have been some
challenges? We're in this work together, and this work is so powerful. It has a generational impact. And so, when I think about the work that we do, certainly it's easy to get lost in the whirlwind of day-to-day operations, right? The whirlwind of trying to make sure our programs and our areas are in compliance in one way or another. But when we start to take a break from that whirlwind, it's not, it doesn't take long to be reminded of the impact that we have, especially coming out of graduation season. Our families from around the community were here for all of the end of the year celebrations. And it's moments like those that, very quickly remind me and so many of our colleagues of the work that we do. In particular, the California Community College continues to be a starting place for many folks, continues to be a safety net for folks, continues to be the site of second chances for many of our students. And as an administrator, a part of my work is to create the systems, the operations, to develop the personnel who will deliver on that promise of the starting place, the launch pad, the safety net, the place of second chance. And so that's what so much of my work is designed to do. Right? It's designing, recruitment and onboarding for new personnel, ensuring that the folks we bring on share the vision and mission of the institution. It's ensuring that as we're going along, once we find out that some of the operations aren't really achieving the outcomes that we want, being responsible for adjusting those operations so that the staff and faculty can do the good work that they have, signed up to do. And then I think so much of my work is also listening to students and being really intentional about it. And you know this well, in the classroom, we spend all of our time with students. We get to see students so regularly, and as an administrator, that regular contact is a little different. It's a lot different, quite honestly, right? And so really investing in the opportunities to sit with students directly, and certainly investing, in the feedback from the staff and faculty about what they're learning and hearing from students. And so, that's the work, right? The work is creating the systems, creating the structures that allow us to achieve the college's mission, achieve the college's vision. And for me, that's really finding ways to make sure that students many of whom are from marginalized communities, many of whom are non-traditional in more ways than one, making sure that they have the steps and the supports to take advantage of what's available.
Wow, Dr. Stevenson, you have given our digital media world a mouthful to chew on and to just really listen to. You've had a lot of information that you covered there, young sir. I appreciate it. You know what? One of the things, as you were talking, it reminded me of one of our legends in the community college, Dr. Helen Benjamin. She said something to me years ago. I'm not sure if it was at a conference that I attended or so, but she was talking about administration was really the extension of the classroom. Is that instead of looking at it as two separate entities, that she always approached it from the standpoint of the fact that as an administrator, she just extends her classroom. Basically, instead of teaching the students hand-on about concepts, you're now thinking more globally about helping faculty and classified to support faculty to create programs that supports the students. So in reality, you've extended the classroom. So I want to say thank you for that. I want to ask you at this time, if you could share your journey, your educational degree attainments and journey. Tell us, our audience, about where you went to college, the struggle, the good, the bad. Where did you get your bachelor's, master's, and doctorate from?
Oh my goodness. I was reflecting on this question even as I was kind of thinking about our time today. And, folks have asked, you've been planning to be a dean all your life, huh? You just seem like you were just, this is, a natural fit for you. And it's like, no, I didn't plan. I didn't really intend for it. Certainly looking back, at the beginning of my career, I started off in hotel management, managing for an international brand, or one of the brands of part of an international hotel collection. And I loved it. It was fun. It's engaging. You're talking to people. I managed a hotel that had about 150 rooms, and we had a small staff, a great staff. And I did that immediately out of high school. And I was like, this is great. My intention was to do that. And it was, you get the hotel discounts. Like, what could be better than that, right? And there were some of these moments, I think about it like the ecosystem that so many of our students have, the kind of village, some people might call it the village. And the folks in my ecosystem, in my village, to mix metaphors there, would always ask me, how's school going? And Professor Henderson, I told you I was managing hotels. I was having fun managing and working in the hotels, and I was not really committed to my classes at that time, right? I was making money I hadn't made before. I was, had a level of engagement that I hadn't had before. But I had folks in my village, folks in my circle, who had high expectations. I'll say it like that. They were tough. It's probably another way to say it too. And because they had high expectations, they would check in with me. And there was a point at which, when I started my education, I didn't understand the system. I started off at Mount San Antonio College in Southern California. And I'll never forget, showing up to class, hearing, that if the classes didn't work out, you could drop them. And so my first semester, when I was working at the hotel and going to school, I just did not connect. I was more interested in working, and I dropped all my courses my first semester, right? Which is, of course, as I know now, like that's a big no-no for new students. And people in my village, though, checking in with me, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And I knew that pressure meant I had to you got to come back. You got to come back. And, I started that second semester. That one wasn't too great. That one wasn't too hot. But it was between the village pushing me in terms of continuing that education, me, working and knowing that this is something that I should invest in. My second year, the fall semester, I said, I'm not going to take all those, full-time load. I'm just going to take one or two. And I came across two instructors that truly, Professor Henderson, when I say they truly changed my trajectory, they probably didn't even know it in the moment, but they were very instrumental. I said, I'm only signing up for one class. I want to do this biology class. And a relative of mine who had been taking classes, she came in and said, I signed up for this speech class, had a great first meeting, but come to find out I didn't meet the prereqs. So this ad code, I want to give it to you because I think you'll be great in this class. She gave me that ad code. I signed up for the class, showed up to the second meeting, right? And instead of the instructor saying, well, you didn't show up to the first, you're not on my roll for the first meeting, and if you miss this, you can't come. Instructor was like, well, wait, so you're in the class? I said, yes, sir. I'm at it. He says, it usually doesn't go like that, but come on in. And that was one of the classes, that was my first speech class that I fell in love with, right? And stayed with throughout the term. The other class was a biology class where I was, when I read the schedule, there's a section that said lecture. Then there was a section that said lab. Well, Professor Henderson, I said, I'm going to go to the lab. And I mean, I just want to give myself credit here. I was committed to that lab. The instructor could see it. I was consistent. I was showing up. And one day, instructor pulls me aside and he says, Jay, you're doing really good in the lab. You're doing better than the students who actually show up for the lecture. And then he goes on to say, if you would just show up for the lecture part of the class too, you'd be doing excellent in the class. And in that moment, I was like, wait, I have to come to the lecture too? That wasn't a choice between the two. I was supposed to come to the lecture and the lab. It was those moments where instructors, right, they weren't assuming that I was trying to get off or get out easy. They weren't assuming that, I just was uninterested. They took the time to say, okay, come here, let me talk to you real quick, right? Let me spend some time with you so you understand how this goes. And that, that term, that fall in that second year truly kind of pushed me forward. And so transferred from Mount San Antonio College to Azusa Pacific University, also in the San Gabriel Valley of the Southern California area, and completed my bachelor's in communication studies. At Mount SAC, I participated on the competitive speech team. That same instructor who let me add in that unconventional way also tapped me on the shoulder and said, what, I think you'd like this speech team thing. Why don't you come on and join this team? And my entire career, the entire kind of formation of both my education and professional career has been around competitive speaking and training students in competitive speaking, as well as being a competitive speaker myself. And those were some of those moments that, it was instructors. It was, to what Dr. Benjamin said, the extension of the classroom. It was the folks who were in that instructional space who decided to make it their business to be concerned about me, make it their business to reach out to me, to spend time with me, to kind of say, hey, go that way. I think you might like that way. And so from while I was completing my education, I've always worked. I've always had a job and been in school. And so while I was at the hotel, I had this moment where I had been there for about 5 years. And I said, I wanted a raise. I think it's time for me to take the next step up. I had asked for that raise. And when payroll came around the next time, the manager had agreed, the owner had agreed, we were good to go. Payroll ran the next time, and Professor Henderson, would you not know it, that raise was 80% of what we had initially agreed to.
Wow.
Now, some may be like, well, but you got your raise. I had been there 5 years. I had sat down, we had had a conversation, came to an agreement. And there was something in that moment when I saw that 80% only, that I heard my village in my head. I heard those instructors in my head. You need to finish your education. You need to be dedicated to your education. And it was one of those moments that I also started to kind of shift professionally. By that time, I had already been a senior at the university. Senior year, it was time to do an internship at the university I attended. Azusa Pacific, we had to do internships in our senior years. And I just thought I was going to go talk to my Mount SAC faculty. Hey, I need to, help y'all around the office for a semester, get this internship done, boom, boom, bop, done. Do you know my coaches told me no? The faculty at Mount SAC was like, no, we're not going to let you do that. There's this program in student services that we want you to go volunteer for, and we want you to help them out. No, we don't need you helping around the office. No, we want you to go work with them. And that program was the college's Mount SAC's version of the Umoja program. And that's when I got hooked, right? I had finally got on my firm kind of educational path at that time. I had that experience working in the hotel where, I was like, man, if they can make a decision and I have nothing else to fall back on, I really need to kind of focus on something different and kind of get my mind straight. And here comes this internship opportunity working with student services, and I loved it. I took all that kind of hotel training about organizing, orchestrating, bringing teams together, getting things done, and then was able to kind of apply that, but do it with a purpose with the student services team. Oh my gosh, I was hooked. And so that internship turned into a classified position at Mount SAC. And while I was working in that classified position, I earned my master's in communication studies and pursued some full-time jobs and was invited to join the full-time faculty at East LA. And I got a chance to do some fantastic things there. I deeply appreciate the growth and the opportunities and the accomplishments that we experienced while at East LA. I was there for 10 years at East LA College, professional development, working student services, an interim dean of academic affairs, and then I accepted the role here in San Jose. But just reflecting on that, right? It's about the village. It's about folks spending time and being interested in growth, and I really deeply benefited that from my journey, And then while I was at East LA, I decided to pursue a doctorate degree in higher education. And of course, being the student services person at heart that I am, I studied students who were in our care program, our single parent students, our student parents, and really looked at the elements, AKA the momentum points and milestones that really advanced their academic success. And we were exploring, what are some of the gateways. And so certainly some of the supports that, during my own research that we had identified, really looking at tutoring, really looking at how students are engaging with the student services, turned out to be some of the greatest kind of momentum points, the points at which students were advanced further toward their academic goals. And so Professor Henderson, that's a little bit of that journey, or a lot of it of that journey, maybe. And it formulates how I lead today, right? It formulates how I try to orchestrate and organize the teams that I support, right? That hotel brain is always kind of going, that student services heart is always pumping and flowing, and understanding instruction is at the heart of what we do, has always informed, my leadership stuff.
Wow, you know what, Dr. Stevenson, you demonstrate three principles as you were talking. You really demonstrate the spirit of community. You demonstrate the spirit of careful guidance of not only students, and you really demonstrate the emotional guidance. But finally, you allow your professional teams and those young people that you work with and seniors that you work with to help them to complete. Because one of the components of a great student support service professional is to help add services and support services so that what the students are learning in the classroom can be supported by external professionals to help them to complete. So I would say community, careful guidance, and academic completion, what you just talked about. Wow, that brings me to my next point. Can you compare your work, and even though you've kind of talked about it, kind of compare your work not from a value standpoint, but just tell our digital audience what are some of the differences between working as an administrator versus a faculty professional? What are some of the pros and cons? What are some of the challenges? I had the opportunity to, I've been around the system so long. You're a very young man. I don't really have those years anymore. I've been around probably old as you are. But you know what? Having worked in so many different capacities, not only definitely within the rank of faculty, but having a year as an administrator, there were some basic differences that I experienced, and so I would like to hear your perspective as you compare your work as an administrator versus a faculty professional.
No, as you were speaking, the one thing that we know is that when we were in the classroom, and when we are in the classroom, because I still get a chance to teach a few classes occasionally.
I like that.
when I am in the classroom, I am responsible for that group in front of me, and just that group. And I get to be more immediate, right? When I move a deadline up, it immediately impacts that group in one way or another, right? When I say, hey, I know this was due on a Friday, but I'm going to give you all the weekend to work on it. Here's some more resources. Boom. There's a level of immediacy that we experience in the classroom. There's a level of, I don't want to say freedom, but freedom to recognize that as a professional instructor, my choices in the classroom are not directly linked to another instructor's choice in the classroom, if that makes sense, right? We're in the same department, but I'm able to be free in a way that, if this, particular assignment doesn't go well, the whole department is not going to fall apart because I chose to use this particular assignment or this activity versus someone else doing something differently. And so there's this kind of independence and freedom that comes along with this, and this level of immediacy that happens in the classroom, which is fantastic, which is why the classroom is so fun and so dynamic. Certainly and there's certainly much more I can say about the classroom experience, but when I compare it to the administrator role, those factors are probably some of the ones that change the most. Where when we are creating, for instance, new policies or new ways of supporting students, the impact of that is not immediately seen. And so sometimes not even sometimes, all the time, right? We have to be committed to really letting things play out and then checking in, because you can't immediately see, well, wait, when we lifted that particular roadblock, how many more students got through? Like, do we know right now? Well, no, you might need a semester or two to really see the impact of your work or the impact of a change. When the administrator of an area, implements a change, it's going to impact multiple individuals across multiple categories or positions. And so I'm always very sensitive to, well, yeah, I know this is going to be great for this one unit over here, but it may have a very different effect on another unit. So I have to be very cognizant that those choices and the rollout of those choices or programs or ideas or whatever the item may be, right? The impact is much more widespread, and that can be good and bad, right? And so understanding the process of something rolling out and being okay with things taking a while to kind of marinate and really take time to see, being aware of the ways in which choices impact our units differently. And certainly in the classroom, we understand that our choices impact students differently, but as an organization, right, those choices impact not only folks internally, but externally, right? A lot of the work I do is with our community partners, both private and public partners. And so when we decide that we're going to get in an agreement with our partners at the local healthcare system, that choice impacts the staff, the faculty, the students, and I have to be very cognizant of what those impacts are, monitor them as they go along. And so those are some of the choices and some of the challenges, right? As one of the simple examples that I always share is, as a faculty member, I was not terribly concerned if, for instance, another faculty was absent from class or something was going on over there. That wasn't my business. That was them. I focus on me. I take care of my team, my students. We're good. But as an administrator, right, we're concerned about the entire organization. So when something isn't or some area isn't performing optimally, that is our concern, right? When students are concerned about their experience in any area of our organization, that is our concern. And so, yeah, those are some of the differences that come up.
And the administrator has to really be concerned in addition to the productivity of the area, because I think what I learned was oftentimes the faculty professional assume that an administrator is just simply blocking what they're doing because of a power trip. But it's not generally. Sometimes it may be, or the relationship has not been positive. But what I've learned is that oftentimes it is because the administrator has restrictions they've been given. And that's one of the challenges of working in a corporatized structure. Yeah. Everybody has to somehow help fulfill goals and formulate ideas, but through a sort of a predetermined structure, with everybody answers to someone. And I find that is the hardest thing to communicate, that I may have to cancel this class. If I had my way, I would allow you to run the course. But I answer to a vice president of student services or instruction. They may decide, based on what the president tells them, based on what the financial stability of the district is, that we have to do certain things in order to meet our fiscal responsibility. So there's many moving parts. But one of the things that strike me as wonderful is your beautiful, warm personality that you exude. And I am sure that many of your professionals are very fond of you, and that you have such an engaging personality, Dr. Stevenson, that I am positive that you are doing great work. Which kind of leads into a question I would like to ask you. How do you really interact with your departments? Do you interact just with the chair? Do you have times where you have an opportunity to speak with not only the department chair, but all the faculty members in the area as well? How do you deal with the part-timers? What are some of the contractual constraints around how San Jose Evergreen does things.
Yeah. And thank you again for those very nice compliments. And you are right, that does lead into this particular question, because more broadly, I really value the work, certainly of our statewide academic senate, and locally our classified senate, because it creates opportunities for the faculty and staff to begin to engage in the broad governance, the broader kind of perspectives, the broader kind of moving parts, as you mentioned, and to kind of learn them in such a way and learn about them in such a way that when certain decisions are made, there's a greater understanding, there's more awareness of some of those moving parts. And so that's part of my investment for our classified professionals. One of the biggest changes was, J. Edward is coming in and saying, yes, you are free to participate in governance. Let's work your schedules. Let's work your assignments. And it's still tough. Even though there's a green light, the work of a classified professional is still heavy. And so they're still trying to navigate that. But being clear that you are free to participate, whether it's hiring committees or other activities. Our campus participated in the Caring Campus initiative. There's a green light to participate, and we're always trying to negotiate the workload so that participation can happen. But the benefit of that is that awareness of all those moving parts and all the pieces that are at play. But once our team is aware of that, their feedback, their ideas are more informed, more refined. And so when they're, sharing, hey, Jay, this is what's going on with me, this is what's happening in my area, this is what I think we should do, it's more, it's certainly more refined, more on point, more relevant to the situation. And I think the same is true for faculty. I really encouraged many of our faculty members who are experts in their disciplines to really get involved specifically in the Senate, but other activities on campus too, to really see some of those moving parts so that they can be a part of the conversation and not just, just a recipient of, well, now they're doing this or now they're changing this. And so that's one particular strategy that comes up for me. One of the features of our district, the San Jose Evergreen Community College District, is that we do not have a formalized department chair model.
Wow.
So what most folks experience or know as a department chair, we don't technically have that. We have a version of that where we call it a department coordinator that's on a kind of year-to-year basis. They are identified, but some of the roles are not really spelled out, or I should say it like this, to be fair, the roles are not necessarily uniformed across all department coordinators or program coordinators. And so what many folks across the state may consider, a department chair, we don't have that exact structure. So it's a lot more involvement. For me, it's a lot more awareness of the details that are happening in our programs. And Professor Henderson, let me tell you, I have added to my, the little dressy tennis shoe collection. I don't know if you see the little folks now, they got the little dressy tennis shoe thing going on, because I walk my areas. I oversee all the, a number of programs, and we're housed in about 6 different buildings across the campus. And I'll take a day and every other day or so and just walk the area so that they know, the team knows I'm here. And of course, when they see me, they're like, you know what, J. Edward, since you're here, we got about 5 things we need to run past you. And we get a lot done in my little just walkthroughs. I don't want anything in particular in terms of me going to walk. It's just to be present in my area. I have about 40 direct reports, including our associate faculty. And so being out, being in the building, being around the buildings on campus is one of the ways I try to be present both with our classified staff and the faculty. So one of the features that I've continued, in addition to the leaders who come before me, is a monthly division meeting. So all of the direct reports for my area have an opportunity to gather with me on Zoom to hear from me, whatever we're doing on campus. And so our associate faculty are invited to participate in that. our associate or adjunct faculty are invited to participate in that. And that's an opportunity to highlight the good work that's happening, to give out some of those reminders as any administrator would need to do. And there are always constraints. You highlighted just a few of them. There are always things we're trying to work within, we're trying to work around. Being in the career education area, the types of instructors that we need are different from some of our liberal arts and social sciences and sciences team members. I am looking for instructors who not only have a credential or degree, but have work experience, lived experience, industry experience. Right. And so that creates a smaller pool sometimes for us. And so we're really trying to maximize and pull people over here, and okay, well, let's try to split this load and give you a little bit over there, and if you can come in on this day, and we're trying to really make it work so that the students are getting the latest and the most relevant training and experience, so that when they finish with us, they're really ready to be launched forward. And so that certainly is a challenge. I also mentioned we're working with partners, so we're delivering training not just on our campuses, but we're also off-site. We're delivering training, certainly with our high school partners, through our dual enrollment CTE setup. So not just your traditional letters, arts, and social sciences courses, but career education courses that we're offering at the high school partner sites. So that means more equipment, right? You just can't show up and teach. You might need some tools. You might need a few extra pieces of this or that in order to facilitate off-site. We're delivering courses at the local Santa Clara County jails, both for adults and youth, the juvenile system. And so it's a lot of moving parts. But that, for me, means there's much more promise, that we're thinking out of the box. We're being entrepreneurial. We're targeting our populations who have been either underrepresented or underserved. And this is our way to meet the expectations, to drive forward our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, right? When we talk about Black and brown men in particular, creating services that meet those young men where they are and those young women where they are. Recently, we've been diving further in supporting our justice involved individuals, not only those who have been in the justice system, but those who, the families who've been impacted. And so we hosted a fantastic conference on campus and with our county partners, where we had county services, we had nonprofits, we had our college here reaching out to those whose families either were justice involved or who themselves were justice involved, and they're coming out to get their lives back on track. That work is so powerful, but it takes all those moving pieces, right? We're working within the contract, we're working within the board policies, we're working within Ed Code and Title V, and understanding our purview versus the Senate purview, and making sure we're moving these things forward. And that's what excites me, about the work.
You know what? Once again, you continue to share enthralling information. And you mentioned some critical points, especially around governance. Because governance is such a tricky item. Not knowing, one of the things I realized as a result of being on the state Senate, I began to understand, with all the different colleges and all the different districts, there is a different relationship. People don't realize that it is the relationship that the faculty develops with the Board of Governors that determines really how many of the managers are able to operate and sort of hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do. And so a lot of people, even professionals, faculty professionals, don't really even know anything about governance. They don't understand that governance is really the one critical topic that sort of travels through every area of the institution. So I appreciate your enthralling energy, and but I want to go back to, once again, I want to appreciate your kind, caring nature. Because your kind, caring nature is what's so important, especially as it relates to dealing with classified professionals and faculty. Because oftentimes, classified professionals feel left out of conversations. And and there's this train of thought that they shouldn't be in governance. and then there's another train of thought that they should be in governance, and then what the contract says, and then the ed code doesn't really give them classified professionals the same level of impact and authority as instructional professionals. And so there's all these emotions and dynamics. I look at the community college very much like a pastor that runs a big mega congregation.
Okay.
You know what? You have a congregation of people who are highly educated, and then you have some who are just factory workers. But your goal is, as the pastor, the clergy, the representative of the clergy, to help everyone to feel valued. How do you do that but still honor the knowledge of those who have knowledge, but not to de-emphasize those who may have decided to work in a more support role and don't have the high degrees?
I'd add to that, many of the classified professionals who are looking for upward mobility in the organization, who have their masters and are working on advanced degrees and want the opportunity to sit at these tables so that they can begin to dive further in the conversation. How do we create those opportunities or those the pathways to do that and be intentional about that? And some districts are great about it, and others are still kind of working and finding their footing in that. But I think that's an important feature. You know, what you just said is we not only do we welcome all students of all backgrounds and experiences and identities, but the same is true for our classified professionals, the faculty and the administrators. And it's this spectrum of just diverse in so many ways in terms of education and preparation and interest level. And our goal as a good pastor, right, is to find ways to raise the people to live and serve in the best way that they can. Yeah, and I don't know if there's a secret sauce to it, but I know it's an ongoing challenge, or something that we have to kind of invest regular attention to, for sure.
Community, careful guidance, and academic completion. Those are three principles that I'm still hearing. Listen, I could talk to you all evening, all afternoon, I should say, because you're such a wonderful professional, and I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak with you. But I'm only going to ask you two more questions. We have to come back with some of those complex questions at another time. But I want to ask you just two additional questions. What are some of the challenges that you face as a man of color in academia?
Yeah, sure. I'm always reminded that the work we do around diversity, equity, and inclusion is certainly organizational, but it is also personal. As a child of teenage parents and the grandchildren of folks from Texas and the Bay Area, the opportunities that my grandparents had and the challenges that they faced it wasn't just one, it was the intersection of things. And so as a Black man, as a gay man, as a spiritual man, as an educator, as an instructor, as a business owner, I'm a small business owner as well, like all of these identities don't exist on their own, they intersect. And so certainly one of the things that attracted me to even serving in the San Jose Evergreen District really was a very clear, a very explicit commitment to creating a culture of belonging, to creating a diverse work environment for its personnel and therefore the students and community that it served. I will say very, very clearly that my community college experience, there weren't a lot of Black people at Mount Sac as a student when I was attending, but there were a lot of different people. And it was that space to engage and creating the opportunities to engage with folks who were different from me, that was really important for me. However, transferring to the university, where there weren't a lot of different people, or Black people for that matter, it created this kind of moment to be like, well, okay, well, wait a minute, what's happening here? I was, to tell a little bit of my age, I was a student, a senior in 2000. I think I was a junior in 2008 at my university. And the night that Barack Obama was elected, there were students in my class, in my organizational communication class, when the teacher was trying to kind of debrief the election. The students said, we don't understand why people are making such a big deal out of the president. It's just another election, this president being elected. We just don't get it. And in a room of 35 people, 40 people, I was the only Black person in the room. And I was confused as to why they were confused in that moment, right? And so for me, the educational element has always been, my role is to get through it, right? And that's been my own coping mechanism in a way, right? And I feel that every person kind of copes differently. My role was to get through it, right? I was not here to engage really the thoughts and the ideas from folks. I had a purpose, and that was to get to the finish line. And that was kind of how I approached and kind of coped in that environment. And then, of course, you go on to graduate school, and the whole focus is dealing with these issues and diving into these conversations and really pulling things apart. And so much of my academic work and now my professional work is really appreciating the intersections and understanding that the intersections are okay. And that even when we, just like for this particular month, when we take time out to honor and to celebrate, one of our many diverse elements. We just celebrated Juneteenth. That in that moment, it is okay to acknowledge and to celebrate that particular component of identity. And it's okay to create space for folks to acknowledge that element of identity, to acknowledge their Blackness and the history that Black people have had in the United States. Also, June is Pride Month, right? And so a part of acknowledgement and celebration is also creating space to acknowledge that the spectrum of identities and spectrums of lived experiences. And then, I'm always again reminded that we still have work to do. There is still much work to do. There's still a lot of work that needs to happen around economic justice for underserved communities and Black people in particular, understanding the impact of wealth and how wealth creates power and access and opportunity, and how do we make sure that underserved communities, our Black and brown communities, our immigrant communities have access to wealth so that they can live the lives that they want to live. And so those questions aren't lost on me. I'm very aware that even in the very diverse California, that LGBT communities are still under threat in diverse California, in diverse Bay Area in particular. And so a part of the work is to create the space, to use the platform that I have as an educator, as a leader, as a business owner, to advance the conversation, to create opportunities for folks to have some difficult conversations. So certainly through our division meetings, our professional developments on campus, my own involvement in the community, trying to contribute to that work. And I feel that that's, again, my way of recognizing my own identity, recognizing the value of that identity that I bring to the table.
You have embodied this afternoon social excellence. And I say that because you have such a warm personality. You share so many caring elements that you carry for not only the professionals that you work with, but you slightly talked about your journey as a professional and as a man who has many components to who he is as an individual. So I want to appreciate you with that. Do you have any other ideas you would like to communicate to our audience before we end our interview here?
My goodness. I want to just share a little story that I think is so useful. So there are 2 graduation photos that we have in our house, at my mom's house in particular, and they are one with me. I participated as a faculty member and walked with the faculty when my mom earned her associate's degree from one of the LA community colleges. And then more recently, my sister earned one of her credentials from San Jose's Computer Information Systems program.
Wow.
And I was that dean big brother, taking photos as she was walking down. I believe in the work that we do so much that I make sure my own family, my own folks are taking advantage of what higher education has to offer. I believe in the work that you do, Professor Henderson, and so many of the folks I know you have and will be conversing with on your program. They are in it for real. And so the work is hard. The work is not always pleasant. The work is not always friendly, but the work is important. And that's what I try to kind of return to. In as much as you were so kind and so complimentary of what I try to give, but I'm sure there are former or current classified professionals and faculty under my purview who are upset with me over one thing or another. Hey, right? That comes with the territory, but the work is important. The work is important. One of my dear colleagues reminds me and a group of us very often about the moral obligation for leadership. And that's faculty leadership, that's classified leadership, that's administrative leadership. That if we believe in what we're saying and the value of education, that means we also have to be the ones to step up and take the hits sometimes, right? Get our lumps and bruises so that this vision of social justice, social and economic upward mobility, that it's realized. And I think you and so many of the folks that you'll be interviewing and have interviewed are the people for the work. And so thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for the chance to share.
And thank you for coming on to our program. Thank you for sharing your message of equality. Equality is so very, very important in all that we do. Love is important in all that we do. I deeply care for you. I deeply honor you. Thank you once again for allowing me to interview you, and you have a positive evening. God bless you.
You as well.
All right. Bye-bye now.